So here we're looking at the area of a rectangle. So before we get started, first thing we need to think about is what is area. Now remember, area is just the amount of surface that an object covers. So the next important thing we need to think about are what units are we going to use when we are describing area. So what we're going to do is we're going to think about this little 1 centimetre by 1 centimetre square. And what we want to be able to do is we want to be able to describe essentially that kind of pinky stuff that's in the middle. And so what we do is we just refer to that as 1 square centimetre, or 1 cm with a little 2 beside it. So with that in mind, we're going to look at these shapes, and we're going to try and work out their area just by looking at what's there. So first shape A, that one's quite straightforward. It has 6 squares making it up. And so if they are still the same size squares as they were before, it has an area of just 6 square centimetres. So 6 cm with a little 2 beside it. Coming into shape B, it's made up of a little bit more complicated looking things. Okay, and it becomes a little bit more complicated because it now starts to involve triangles. But if we actually have a look, we find out that these triangles actually just split the squares in half. So each triangle that we've got just counts for half. And so once we add these all up, we've got 1, 2, 3 squares, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 triangles to add in as halves. And so we end up getting 6 square centimetres here as well. Finally, C, up in the top right, we've got 4 squares plus 4 triangles. That gives us another total area of 6 square centimetres. And so we've got 3 shapes with the exact same areas, but all 3 of them look reasonably different from each other. Okay, so we need to be mindful that just because it looks one way doesn't necessarily tell us very much about its area. Moving on though, we don't necessarily want to have to sit and count the squares every single time. As soon as we start looking at larger shapes, that starts to become very time consuming. And so what we want to do instead is we want to think about different ways that we split the shape up. So looking at this one, we can split it up like this, into either 6 rows with 5 squares in each of them, which is the same as 6 multiplied by 5, or we can split it up this way, where we get 5 columns with 6 squares in each of them, which is just the same as 5 times 6. Okay, even more generally than that though, we don't want to have to draw squares on them every single time anyway. So looking at a rectangle, we've got the sides labelled along the bottom, we've got the length, and up the top we've got the breadth. And so in order to find the area, it would be our number of squares across multiplied by our numbers of squares wide. Well, we don't want to have to do that. We can just describe it as the length along the bottom multiplied by the breadth here up the top. Or if we want to shorten that even more, area is equal to L times B. So looking at that in terms of an example, we want to use this to help us find the area of the purpley rectangle shown below. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to write down our formula. So the area is equal to L times B. My next step is I'm going to substitute my numbers in. So my area is equal to 8 times 3. And finally, I actually carry out the sum. So my area is equal to 24 square centimetres. Okay, some more questions to look at then. What are the areas of each of these shapes? So we've got this one here. Again, area is equal to length times breadth. Now, this one's a special rectangle because all the sides in this one are exactly the same, and often we forget that a square is just a special type of rectangle. So another way we could have written that is L times L, or L squared. That's where our squared term comes from. Sticking our numbers in is my next line. I've got 6 multiplied by 6. 6 times 6 is 36. So that gives me an area here in this pink square of 36 square centimetres. Next shape is this orangey rectangle. It's got a length of 2 and a breadth of 9. I want to find its area, so the first thing I'm doing is I'm writing down my formula of A equals L times B. Next thing, substituting my numbers. So A is equal to 2 times 9, and 2 times 9 is 18, so that gives me a total area of 18 square centimetres. Got another one, a green one down here. I want to find its area. First thing I'm doing, writing down my formula. A equals L times B. Then I'm going to substitute in my numbers. And so I've got A is equal to 3 times 6. Okay, again, 3 times 6 is 18, and so my area is 18 square centimetres. And finally, for my yellow rectangle, I've got a length of 9 and a breadth of 4. So I write in my formula, A equals L times B, substitute in my numbers, A equals 9 times 4, 9 times 4 is 36. And so I write down my answer, A equals 36 square centimetres, not forgetting to include my units.